The envelope was sealed with red wax, and that made the whole room lean closer. A young fighter had placed it on the table like a sacred object. On the front, in careful black ink, he had written two words, "Secret Technique." Bruce Lee looked at the envelope, then at the young man's hands. The room was a private upstairs training space above a print shop, narrow and warm, with low windows, creaking floorboards, a tea table, a hanging bag, and stacks of old newspapers tied with string. Outside, traffic moved through the evening. Inside, several students waited for something they hoped would feel hidden. The young fighter's name was Daniel Mercer in this story. He was fictional but familiar. 24 years old, strong, ambitious, restless, with the kind of hunger that can become greatness or poison, depending on what feeds it. Daniel did not want another drill. He wanted the thing behind the drills. He had trained in several schools, collected techniques from traveling instructors, copied footwork from tournament champions, and filled notebooks with drawings of strikes, traps, locks, and counters. His room at home looked like a museum of unfinished commitment. Every page said the same thing in a different form. There must be a shortcut. Daniel respected Bruce, but not patiently. He admired the result and wanted access to the source without paying the full price of becoming the kind of man who could carry it. That is not rare. Many young men do not reject discipline. They simply hope discipline has a hidden door. The envelope was his way of asking. He had written down the techniques he believed might be secret. A hidden strike, a foot angle, a pressure point, a method for ending a fight before fear could speak. He slid it toward Bruce and said, "I want to know what you do that others do not." A few students smiled. They wanted the answer too. Not because they were lazy, but because the idea of a secret flatters everyone. A secret suggests that greatness may be closer than the boring evidence indicates. It tells a man he is not behind. He simply has not been shown the key. Bruce did not open the envelope. That disappointed the room immediately. He touched it with two fingers, moved it slightly aside, and asked Daniel to stand. "Show me what you know," he said. Daniel's face tightened. He had wanted revelation before examination. Daniel stepped onto the wooden floor and moved through combinations he had practiced for months. Fast hands, spinning kick, trapping sequence, low sweep, sudden elbow, quick retreat. It looked impressive in fragments. The students watched with respect. Bruce watched the spaces between the fragments. When Daniel finished, he breathed hard and looked at Bruce with the expectation of a man who has presented enough proof to deserve the next door. Bruce nodded. "You have many tools," he said. Daniel smiled. Then Bruce added, "But you are not yet the man holding them." That sentence bothered Daniel more than criticism of a technique would have. Techniques can be adjusted without touching identity. But Bruce had named the larger problem. Daniel had collected answers faster than he had built the person who could choose among them under pressure. Daniel pointed at the envelope. "That is why I asked for the secret." Bruce shook his head. "You are asking for more weight when your hands are already full." The room quieted. Several students looked at Daniel's notebooks stacked near the wall. Bruce picked up one of Daniel's notebooks. He flipped through pages of careful sketches and arrows. "This is not bad," he said. Daniel relaxed slightly. "But if you collect water in 10 cups and cannot drink when thirsty, the problem is not the number of cups." A student named Marcus laughed softly. Daniel shot him a look. Bruce closed the notebook. "Tonight," he said, "we will look for the secret." The mood lifted. Daniel's eyes sharpened. He thought the door might still open. He did not realize Bruce was about to make the door smaller. Bruce drew a short line on the floor with chalk. "Attack from here," he told Daniel. "One straight punch." Daniel frowned. "Only one?" Bruce nodded. "Only one." Daniel looked toward the other students as if asking whether this was a joke. Nobody answered. He threw the punch. It was fast and technically correct. Bruce stepped just outside it and touched Daniel's ribs. "Again." Daniel punched again. Bruce touched the shoulder. "Again." Daniel punched a third time. Bruce stopped near the throat. The room saw the pattern. Daniel saw only frustration. "I know the straight punch," Daniel said. Bruce answered, "Then why does it keep bringing you to the wrong place?" The question cut through the pride around the technique. Daniel's punch was not useless. It simply carried his impatience into the line before his body was ready to own it. Bruce made him slow down. Daniel hated that. Men searching for secrets rarely enjoy returning to basics. Basics feel like being sent back to childhood. But basics are where grown men discover whether their confidence has a foundation or only decoration. Daniel punched slowly. His shoulder lifted. Bruce stopped him. He punched again. His rear heel rose. Bruce stopped him. He punched again. His jaw tightened before the arm moved. Bruce stopped him. Each correction was small enough to feel insulting and important enough to expose him. After 10 minutes, Daniel was sweating more from restraint than from speed. The impressive combinations had made him breathe hard. The single corrected punch made him restless. That is the hidden difficulty of fundamentals. They remove the distraction of variety and leave a man alone with the exact place he is dishonest. Bruce picked up the sealed envelope and placed it on the floor in front of Daniel. "There is your secret," he said. Daniel stared at it. "Inside?" Bruce shook his head. "Under it." Daniel lifted the envelope. Beneath it was the chalk line. Some students almost laughed. Daniel did not. He felt the trap in the lesson. Bruce had not mocked him. He had placed the secret exactly where Daniel least wanted to look. In the line, the foot, the shoulder, the breath, the unglamorous place before technique becomes visible. Bruce said, "A secret technique is usually an ordinary movement practiced until others cannot see why it works." That sentence settled into the room. It did not flatter anyone. It made the secret larger and less convenient at the same time. Daniel looked disappointed, which was honest. Bruce respected honest disappointment more than fake understanding. "You wanted something new," Bruce said. Daniel nodded. "Yes," Bruce answered. "New things are often used to avoid old corrections." The students became still because everyone had done it. A new method, a new teacher, a new weapon, a new philosophy, a new notebook. Sometimes discovery is real. Sometimes it is a beautiful escape from the correction waiting at the beginning. Bruce told Marcus to attack Daniel with the same straight punch Daniel had been practicing. Daniel had to intercept and respond. On the first attempt, he chose a fancy trap from his notebook. Marcus's punch broke through and touched his chest. Not hard. Enough. Daniel reset, embarrassed. On the second attempt, he tried a different technique. Too late. On the third, he overcommitted, and Marcus stepped around him. The room did not mock him. That made it worse in a useful way. Silence forced him to hear the failure without entertainment. Bruce stopped the drill. "You are choosing from a library while the punch is already at the door," he said. Daniel breathed through his nose. The line hurt because it described exactly what he felt. Too many answers arriving after the question had already entered. "Then what should I choose?" Daniel asked. Bruce answered, "The answer that is already trained." Daniel looked at the chalk line again. It suddenly seemed less childish. The simple punch, the simple angle, the simple interception, these were not beneath him. He was not yet inside them. Bruce made him practice one interception. No flourish, no extra hit, no secret name. Touch the line, shift the foot, arrive at the ribs, stop. Again, again, again. Daniel's face tightened, then emptied, then focused. The students saw the first layer of performance fall away. After several repetitions, Bruce changed Marcus's rhythm. Daniel failed immediately. "Good," Bruce said. Daniel looked irritated. "How is that good?" Bruce answered. "Now we found where the technique was still only a pattern. A pattern is useful until reality changes the music." Daniel had many patterns. Bruce was trying to teach him how to hear. That difference is important. A secret technique promises a perfect answer. Real training builds a man capable of recognizing the question. Daniel repeated the drill with changing rhythm. He failed often. His face lost its earlier confidence. But something better replaced it. Attention. He stopped thinking about the envelope. He stopped looking at the students. He began noticing Marcus's shoulder before the punch fully committed. Bruce saw the shift. "There," he said. "Do not chase the secret. Notice sooner." Daniel intercepted cleanly once. The touch arrived at the ribs. It was not dramatic. It was not the kind of moment a young man dreams about. It worked. Daniel looked surprised. Bruce stopped him before pride could steal the lesson. Again. The next attempt failed. Daniel almost cursed. Bruce nodded. Now you see why secrets are popular. They do not ask to be repeated after they disappoint you. The room understood. A fantasy secret remains perfect because it is never tested long enough to become ordinary. Real skill becomes ordinary through repetition, then extraordinary under pressure. But the student must survive the boredom between those two states. Bruce opened the envelope at last. The room leaned forward. Inside were Daniel's written questions, pressure points, hidden entries, no-inch strike, eye feints, nerve attacks, secret footwork, fastest counter against a bigger man. Bruce read them silently. Then he folded the paper and returned it to Daniel. These are not questions about fighting, he said. Daniel frowned. Bruce continued. They are questions about fear. You want a way to end uncertainty before it touches you. Daniel looked away. The words had gone deeper than technique again. Bruce did not say it cruelly. That was why it entered. A man can reject an insult. He has a harder time rejecting a truth delivered without appetite for humiliation. Daniel finally admitted, I do not like not knowing. Bruce nodded. No fighter does. The answer gave Daniel dignity. He was not uniquely weak. He was human. But Bruce did not stop there. The answer is not to collect secrets. The answer is to become stable inside not knowing. That sentence was the real secret, but it did not feel like one. It felt like work. Daniel had wanted a method that removed uncertainty. Bruce offered a character strong enough to meet uncertainty without panic. Adults understand why the second is harder. Bruce asked Daniel to stand with his eyes closed while Marcus moved around him. Daniel was to open his eyes only when he heard the foot touch the floor. On the first attempt, he opened too early. On the second, too late. On the third, he flinched before anything happened. You are fighting what you imagine, Bruce said. Not what is there. Daniel nodded. He could feel it now. His body kept inventing danger a half-second before reality arrived. That invention made him choose too early and made all his secret techniques late. They repeated the drill until Daniel's breathing slowed. He began opening his eyes closer to the truth of the sound. Marcus attacked after one step. Daniel intercepted badly, then better, then badly again. The room became quiet in the best way. People were watching learning, not performance. Bruce said, a secret does not make you calm. Calm lets you use what you know. Daniel looked at the envelope on the table. It no longer seemed powerful. It seemed like a confession. He had wrapped his fear in red wax and called it curiosity. Marcus asked Bruce whether secret techniques existed at all. Bruce smiled slightly. Yes, he said. The room awakened. Bruce continued, but they are secret mostly because few men have patience to practice what is plain. The room relaxed and tightened at the same time. That was the kind of answer adults respect. It does not deny mystery by becoming cynical. It removes false mystery and leaves responsibility. There are things most men cannot see, not because they are hidden by masters, but because they are hidden by their own impatience. Bruce pointed to Daniel's foot. This is secret to the man who never looks down. He touched Daniel's shoulder. This is secret to the man who only watches hands. He tapped Daniel's chest lightly. This is secret to the man who trains while afraid of being ordinary. Daniel's eyes changed at the last sentence. Ordinary. That was the fear beneath the fear. He wanted secret technique because secret technique would make him special. It would prove that he had been chosen for something faster than the slow dignity of earning. Bruce gave him no romance. A man who cannot be ordinary in training will become foolish under pressure, he said, because pressure makes everyone ordinary first. The room absorbed that. Pressure strips away decorations. What remains is what has actually been practiced. Daniel asked what he should do with the envelope. Bruce said, keep it. Daniel looked surprised. As a reminder. Bruce nodded. But change what it means. He took a pencil and crossed out secret. Above it, he wrote practiced. The envelope now read, practiced technique. The room smiled, but not mockingly. The red wax remained. The drama remained. Only the lie had changed. That is often how growth works. A man does not lose his hunger. He changes what the hunger is allowed to chase. Bruce placed the envelope on the wall with a small piece of tape. Every time you want another secret, Stand here and do one honest repetition. Daniel looked at it, then at the chalk line. The instruction felt almost cruel in its simplicity. They returned to the drill. One line, one entry, one stop. Marcus changed speed, angle, hesitation, rhythm. Daniel failed less often, not because he had discovered a hidden method, but because he had stopped shopping for a new answer, while the old one still needed him. After 30 minutes, Daniel intercepted cleanly 3 times in a row. The students felt the shift. Bruce did not applaud. He asked Marcus to change the angle again. Daniel failed immediately, but this time he did not look wounded. He nodded. "There," he said. "That is where I lose it." Bruce smiled. "Now you are training." The sentence gave Daniel more satisfaction than praise would have. Praise tells a man he is seen. Training tells him he has a path. Daniel had finally stopped begging for a door and started walking. A younger student asked, "But what about a bigger opponent?" Daniel almost reached for a notebook answer. He stopped himself. Bruce noticed. "Good," he said. Then he answered the student. "Bigger men ask bigger questions. Do not bring a secret. Bring structure, timing, and a mind that does not panic." That answer was less exciting than a hidden strike and more useful than one. A secret for a bigger man flatters the smaller man's fear. Structure, timing, and calm give him work. Bruce kept turning every fantasy into a responsibility the body could train. Daniel volunteered to test against Marcus with more pressure. This mattered. At the start, he had wanted hidden knowledge before being examined. Now he wanted examination so knowledge could become real. That is the turning point in a serious student. Marcus pressed harder. Daniel lost the line twice, recovered once, failed again, then finally entered cleanly and stopped. His face did not light up with vanity. It tightened with understanding. The movement worked only when the man behind it stopped reaching for escape. Bruce said, "Do not remember this as the night you found the secret." Daniel nodded. "Remember it as the night you stopped asking the wrong question." The students heard that too. A better question can change a man faster than a better answer. The wrong question had been, "What hidden technique can save me from uncertainty?" The better question was, "What must I practice until uncertainty no longer steals my timing?" That question had no glamour, but it could make Daniel dangerous in a grounded, responsible way. They drank tea afterward. Daniel sat with the envelope in front of him. He looked tired, not defeated. There is a special tiredness that follows honest practice. It has less shame in it than the exhaustion of performing. Bruce let him sit in that tiredness without filling it with advice. Marcus finally said, "I wanted to know too." Other students nodded. Daniel looked up, surprised. The room had not been above him. They had shared the hunger. That gave him relief and also responsibility. If he returned to chasing secrets, he would not be doing it innocently anymore. Bruce said, "Curiosity is good, but curiosity must be loyal to training, not to fantasy." The tea steamed between them. Outside, the print shop below clattered as someone moved paper rolls. Ordinary sounds surrounded an ordinary truth that would take years to practice. Daniel asked whether Bruce had ever searched for secrets. Bruce looked at him for a long moment. "Every serious student does," he said. "Then the work teaches him where to look." Daniel asked, "Where?" Bruce touched the floor. "Here." The answer was almost too simple, but after the night's work it did not feel empty. The floor had shown Daniel more truth than the envelope. It had recorded his late foot, his early fear, his stiff shoulder, his need to be special. The floor had kept no secrets from him. For the next month, Daniel trained differently. He still kept notebooks, but the pages changed. Fewer dramatic titles, more measurements. How many clean entries? Where did breath change? Which angle caused panic? What failed under fatigue? His writing became less exciting and more useful. He kept the envelope taped above his training space. Practiced technique. The red wax became a private joke and a serious warning. Whenever he wanted to chase something new, he stood under it and did one honest repetition, then another. At first he resented the ritual, then he trusted it, not because it made him feel special, but because it made him harder to fool. A man who has repeated one honest movement under many conditions becomes less impressed by promises that require no payment. One evening, a newer student came to Daniel and whispered, "Do you know anything Bruce does not show everyone?" Daniel felt the old pleasure rise. He could become the gatekeeper now. He could make himself larger by suggesting hidden knowledge. Instead, he pointed to the chalk line. "Yes," he said. The student leaned closer. Daniel continued, "Stand there and punch honestly for 20 minutes. The student looked disappointed. Daniel recognized the face immediately because he had worn it himself. Daniel did not mock him. That was important. Men who escape a trap often become cruel to those still inside it. Daniel remembered Bruce's restraint and offered the student the same dignity. "If you still want the secret after that," he said, "we will talk." The student lasted 7 minutes before his shoulder rose and his breath broke. Daniel corrected him. The student frowned. "This is basic." Daniel nodded. "Yes, that is why it is dangerous. You cannot hide from it." That sentence proved the lesson had become Daniel's. Not because he repeated Bruce's exact words, but because he understood the pressure behind them. Influence matures when the student can translate the standard into his own language, without weakening it. Bruce saw this from across the room and said nothing. He did not need to claim the moment. A teacher's deepest victories often happen when the student teaches correctly without looking for approval. Bruce returned to correcting Marcus's footwork. Daniel continued improving. Not dramatically at first. His movements became smaller, less crowded. He stopped collecting new counters every week. He began pressure testing fewer things more honestly. Some people thought he was becoming simpler. In truth, he was becoming less scattered. A scattered man can look impressive because he has many pieces flying around him. A centered man may look plain until pressure arrives. Daniel was learning to prefer the second kind of strength. It did not flatter him as quickly, but it stayed with him longer. Months later, Daniel entered a local sparring event. In the warm-up room, fighters traded rumors about secret methods and hidden tricks. Daniel listened politely, then stepped away to practice the same line Bruce had drawn months earlier. One punch, one angle, one breath. One. A fighter asked if he was nervous. Daniel answered honestly, "Yes." Then he added, "But I know where to stand." That was not a boast. It was a quiet sign that fear no longer sent him shopping for miracles. He had a place to begin. In the match, Daniel faced a faster opponent. The old Daniel would have searched his library under pressure. The new Daniel watched, breathed, and trusted the trained answer. He lost the first exchange. Then he found the rhythm. Then the simple entry worked. It did not win the whole match by magic. That would betray the lesson. It gave him one honest moment, then another. He still made mistakes. He still had to adjust. But he did not collapse into too many choices. The work held him together. Afterward, he wrote in his notebook, "No secret, only fewer lies." That line became his private motto. It was not as dramatic as the red envelope, but it was truer. Bruce would have approved, though he might have corrected the footwork beneath the sentence. This is the adult heart of the story. A young man asks for secret power because he wants to feel chosen. A teacher gives him ordinary work until he becomes responsible enough to choose himself through repetition. That is more demanding than being handed a mystery. The story should not mock Daniel's hunger. Hunger matters. Without hunger, he would not have stayed through the boring correction. But hunger must be disciplined or it becomes a gambler. It keeps betting on the next secret instead of building the next honest skill. Bruce's role is to discipline the hunger without killing it. That is an important masculine lesson. Do not shame ambition. Shape it. Aim it at work. Make it pay. Let the young man keep his fire, but remove the illusion that fire alone is a technique. Daniel's role is to represent the viewer who wants the hidden shortcut. Not because the viewer is weak, but because everyone wants a faster door when the path feels long. The episode respects that desire and then corrects it with practical dignity. The secret technique, in the end, is not secret and not a technique in the glamorous sense. It is the ability to practice what is plain until it becomes available under stress. That availability is what other people later mistake for mystery. A punch that lands on time looks like a secret to the man who is late. Calm looks like a secret to the man who panics. Balance looks like a secret to the man who only trains when fresh. There are many secrets, and most are unpaid basics. That is why the envelope remains powerful visually. At first it promises hidden knowledge. Then it becomes a mirror of fear. Then it becomes a reminder of practice. The object changes meaning as Daniel changes. That gives the story shape. Bruce Lee, in this grounded telling, does not guard a secret temple. He guards the student from his own shortcut addiction. He refuses to make mystery cheap. He points to the floor, the line, the breath, the repetition, and says, "Here." For adult viewers, that is stronger than fantasy. Fantasy says you are one key away. Work says you are one honest repetition away from becoming slightly harder to fool. The second is slower, but it gives dignity because it gives responsibility. Daniel began the night wanting something that would make him different from ordinary men. He ended it learning that ordinary work done honestly makes a man different in a way that can survive pressure. That is a better kind of special. The room above the print shop returned to normal after the students left. The chalk line remained faintly on the floor. The teacups were empty. The envelope stayed on the wall. Outside, traffic kept moving. Nothing mystical had happened. A young man had simply been redirected from fantasy to work. But simple redirection can change a life. Daniel would still be tempted by secrets. Everyone is. A new method, a new promise, a new shortcut. But now temptation had to pass under the envelope and answer one question. Have you practiced what is already in your hands? Most temptation failed there. Not all. Daniel was human. Sometimes he wandered. Sometimes he collected again. But he returned sooner because the lesson had given him a way back. The chalk line was no longer punishment. It was home. The best teachers give students a way back. Not just inspiration. Not just correction. A way back when pride, fear, ambition, or boredom pull them away. Bruce gave Daniel the line, the envelope, and the understanding that the secret was usually waiting where he had stopped looking. That is the mature payoff. The fighter who asked Bruce Lee for a secret technique did not receive a hidden strike. He received a harder gift, the removal of the excuse that something hidden was missing. Once that excuse disappeared, only the work remained. And once only the work remained, Daniel had to decide whether he truly wanted power or only the feeling of being close to it. That decision separates students from collectors. Collectors want possession. Students accept transformation. Bruce did not give Daniel possession. He forced transformation to begin. It began badly, with frustration and sweat, and then became cleaner through repetition. That is how real things begin. Not as revelation, but as correction accepted one more time than pride wanted. The final image should be Daniel alone after class, standing under the envelope that now reads, "Practiced technique," repeating the simple entry on the chalk line. The room is quiet. No one applauds. That is why the moment is finally true. This is the lesson. Stop begging for secrets while refusing the correction that is already visible. The secret is often not hidden by the teacher. It is hidden by the student's impatience, vanity, fear, and boredom. Bruce Lee becomes the standard because he does not flatter the shortcut. He respects the student enough to deny him the fantasy and give him the floor. That denial feels harsh at first. Later, it feels like mercy. Daniel eventually understood that mercy. If Bruce had given him a flashy answer, he would have collected it and remained scattered. By refusing, Bruce made him meet the one opponent no secret technique could bypass: himself. That is why the story belongs with the others. It is not mystical. It is not fan worship. It is a grounded lesson about ambition, fear, work, and the dignity of earning what impatient men want to possess. The red envelope stayed on the wall long after the wax cracked. Students asked about it. Daniel would tell them, "That was the night I learned the secret." They leaned closer. Then he pointed to the floor and said, "Stand there." The disappointed look that followed always made Daniel smile, not because he enjoyed their disappointment, but because he recognized the doorway. Every serious student must pass through that phase. The moment when fantasy realizes the teacher's about to ask for work instead of admiration. Bruce had passed him through it without cruelty. That is why Daniel could pass others through it without cruelty too. The secret was not a trick. It was a lineage of honesty. One man refusing to let another man hide behind mystery when the correction was already at his feet. For the viewer, the question is direct. What envelope are you carrying? What secret are you waiting for before you fully train, build, write, practice, repair, apologize, or begin? What ordinary correction have you renamed as something beneath you? The answer will not be comfortable. It rarely is. But discomfort is often the first honest teacher after fantasy loses authority. Daniel's discomfort became footwork. Footwork became timing. Timing became calm. Calm became power he could actually use. That path is slower than a secret and stronger than one. A secret can be lost, exposed, or misunderstood. A practiced truth becomes part of the body. No one can steal it because it is no longer information. It is who the man has become under pressure. That is the final adult lesson. Stop asking only what the master knows. Ask what the master has practiced until knowing became action. Then ask whether you are willing to practice long enough for your own knowledge to become action too. Bruce Lee did not hide the secret from Daniel. He made the secret impossible to romanticize. The line, the foot, the shoulder, the breath, the repetition, plain things paid for honestly. That was the difference between a collector and a fighter. And when Daniel finally understood, the red envelope stopped being a locked door. It became a receipt. Proof that the night he came looking for hidden power, Bruce Lee handed him the one thing he had been avoiding, the work already waiting in front of him. The secret technique was not hidden in the envelope. It was hidden in Daniel's refusal to repeat what bored him, correct what embarrassed him, and stay with what exposed him. Bruce showed him that the door was open all along, but only work could walk through it. The next time Daniel trained alone, the room felt less flattering. Before, being alone had made him feel like a hidden master preparing something special. Now it felt like being watched by the line on the floor. The chalk did not care what he wanted to become. It cared where his foot landed. That honesty was uncomfortable and useful. Daniel began timing himself, not to create drama, but to notice when impatience entered. The first 5 minutes were usually clean. Then boredom came. Then fantasy. Then the desire to change drills before the drill had finished teaching. He wrote that down. Boredom is where the fake student leaves. The sentence embarrassed him because it sounded like something he would once have mocked. But he kept it. It was truer than the drawings of secret counters he had copied without pressure. The print shop owner below eventually recognized the rhythm of Daniel's practice. One step, one strike, reset, one step, one strike, reset. The old man joked that the ceiling had learned the technique before Daniel had. Daniel laughed because the joke contained a fair warning. Repetition can become mechanical if the mind leaves. Bruce had warned him about that too. Practice technique was not dead repetition. It was a live repetition. Each attempt had to answer a question. Was the body more honest than before, or only more familiar? Daniel discovered that familiarity could become another trap. After 2 weeks, he began moving faster and feeling proud again. Then Marcus changed the rhythm and exposed him. The old anger rose, but now Daniel recognized it sooner. He had not conquered impatience. He had become quicker at catching it. That is progress many people miss. They expect transformation to feel like the weakness disappearing. Often it begins as noticing the weakness before it takes control. Bruce had not given Daniel perfection. He had given him a method of returning. One night, Daniel asked Bruce whether mastery ever felt finished. Bruce looked at the envelope on the wall and said, "Finished things are easy to hang up. Living things must be fed." Daniel knew the answer was about more than technique. The phrase secret technique began to sound childish to him, but he did not despise the younger version of himself who had written it. That mattered. Shame would have made him pretend he had never wanted shortcuts. Maturity let him admit the desire and train past it. Bruce wanted that kind of maturity. Not students who claimed they never wanted easy answers, but students honest enough to recognize the temptation when it arrived. A temptation seen clearly is already weaker than a temptation wearing the mask of wisdom. Months later, Daniel finally opened the envelope again. The old paper smelled faintly of wax and tea. The questions looked dramatic and nervous. He did not throw them away. He wrote beside each one what the real question had been. Beside pressure point, he wrote fear of strength. Beside secret footwork, he wrote fear of being late. Beside fastest counter, he wrote fear of uncertainty. Beside hidden strike, he wrote wanting to be special. The page became less technical and more honest. He showed the page to Bruce. Bruce read it slowly and returned it without praise. Better questions, he said. Daniel smiled. It was the kind of approval that did not make him lazy. Better questions still demanded better work. The students who had been there that first night began noticing the change. Daniel interrupted people less. He asked fewer questions and practiced longer after answers. When he did ask, the questions had weight. They came from contact with failure, not from hunger for novelty. That is the proof that the lesson had entered him. His curiosity did not die. It became heavier. Light curiosity jumps from topic to topic. Heavy curiosity stays with a problem until the problem either opens or exposes the student's impatience. Bruce once told him, "Do not confuse variety with depth." Daniel wrote it on the inside cover of his new notebook. Then he crossed out several pages of planned technique collection and replaced them with one line, "Test under pressure before adding more." That notebook looked boring compared with the old ones. It was also more dangerous. Boring pages can build a strong man if they are paid for with sweat. Beautiful pages can hide a weak one if they are only collected. This is the practical dignity of the episode. The young fighter is not shamed for wanting excellence. He is corrected for wanting excellence without surrendering his fantasy of being chosen. Bruce redirects him from possession to transformation. Possession asks, "What can I get?" Transformation asks, "What must I become?" Daniel had asked for the first. Bruce answered with the second. That is why the answer felt disappointing before it felt merciful. A shortcut promises to keep the student the same while giving him better results. Training does the opposite. It changes the student until he can produce better results without needing to pretend the change came from a hidden door. That is why secret techniques are seductive. They offer power without identity change. But real power always changes identity. A man who truly trains becomes less available to excuses, less impressed by mystery, and less frightened by ordinary work. Daniel's final test was not a match, not a dramatic street fight, and not a hidden strike revealed under moonlight. It was a quiet evening when he wanted to skip the chalk line because he felt advanced. He did not skip it. That was the victory. He stood where Bruce had told him to stand months earlier. He breathed, he stepped. He corrected the shoulder, he corrected the foot. He repeated the ordinary movement until the room felt simple again. No one saw it. That made it real. The secret had finally changed locations. It was no longer in the envelope, the notebook, the master, or the rumor. It was in Daniel's willingness to do the plain thing when his ego wanted a more impressive task. And that is what Bruce Lee had been teaching from the beginning. The secret is not hidden from the worthy. It is hidden by the unwilling. Once Daniel became willing, the floor began giving him what the envelope never could. The last image should be ordinary enough to be believed. Daniel alone on the creaking wooden floor, envelope taped to the wall, chalk line fading, print shop quiet below, one honest repetition after another. The mystery is gone. The dignity remains. Bruce Lee did not answer the envelope by opening it. He answered by opening Daniel. Not with mysticism, not with humiliation, but with pressure, repetition, and truth. The fighter who wanted a secret technique received the harder gift, a way to stop hiding from what was already visible.